Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 148 in the Gospel of John. Today, Pilate is going to sit on his own judgment seat, don't we all? So he's sitting on the judgment seat of himself. He's going to eventually judge himself by how he judges Jesus. So we're near the end of the Roman trial of Jesus before Pilate, which is to say, we're near the end of the trial of Pilate himself. Now, he's already been warned that he's sinning. He's already been informed that the Lord is granting him a certain amount of authority. It's significant and it's real, and he's terrified by it. And he's deciding what to do with Jesus in a couple of ways. First, politically and judicially, have him crucified or not, have him killed, but also personally, because every encounter with Jesus is a personal encounter. It's choose this day whom you will serve. Let's go to the passage. This is from John 19. I'm going to start in verse 12. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha. Now, it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour, about noon. He said to the Jews, "Behold your king." They cried out, "Away with him, away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." So he delivered him over to them to be crucified. So of interest, Caesar, who's not here, plays a prominent role of what's happening here. He's invoked by the Jews. If you release this man, you're not a friend of Caesar's. You're not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king, which has been kind of the theme here in the trial, opposes Caesar. So Pilate, who theoretically has authority over the Jews, is trumped here by the Jews' appeal to this guy who's not here, who's Caesar. So Jesus is a king, and all kings are a challenge to this guy. So Pilate is wrestling with, what should I do with the authority and the agency that I currently have? And whose authority, this is the question he's considering now, whose authority am I under, and what's that going to result in? So Caesar, again, not physically here, his presence is felt very strongly. All right. On one hand, Pilate says, "I find no guilt in him." He said that earlier. Actually, he says it 3 times. So the voice of one who is not here, Caesar, is speaking louder than the voice of someone is here. So don't forget that Pilate is a mortal man, a political man, a spiritual man, and he's a married man. Matthew 27:19 says, "Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat," so right at this moment in the trial, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." So based on the timing of John, this is when Pilate gets that particular message. And she says, "Jesus is righteous. Get out of judging him. I've had an encounter with him in the night. It terrified me. It's been hard." In a sense, I think she is advising him to get off the judgment seat for the one who eventually is going to sit on the judgment seat of us. Get off the judgment seat of Christ. So Pilate himself is on this judgment seat, you see here. And how he judges Jesus is eventually how he is going to be judged finally. So, but we can't throw too many stones at our friend Pilate here, because how we judge Jesus is also how we are also going to be ultimately judged. So Pilate, like many humans, say exactly what Pilate says. "I find no guilt in him, for who can find a flaw with Jesus? And yet I still negatively judge him." So in this way, Pilate sits on his own judgment seat. And don't we all? Jews sit on their judgment seat of Christ. This podcaster sits on his judgment seat. And so do you. So what we do with Jesus is ultimately how we are judged. If we say about Jesus, "Hey, his life was exemplary, his teaching are without flaw, his conduct was without sin, and yet, he's not for me," or like the Jews did, "Away with him," or isn't this exactly what Pilate is saying and exactly what the Jews are saying? I don't think we can hear the trial story of Jesus from the outside without putting ourselves on that judgment seat of the seat that's judging Christ. I see the irony that Jesus will one day sit on the judgment seat of Christ. He gets to judge without mistake. But for today, Pilate sits on the judgment seat judging Christ, and so do we. So are we like the Jews with manufactured testimony and hardened spiritual hearts, crying, "Away, away with him"? Or are we like Pilate, who cannot find fault and yet cannot do righteously with the authority that he temporarily has? So Pilate's judgment of Jesus gives us a template to assess our judgment of Jesus. Similarly, we've been given such agency to judge Jesus. Similarly, we have the same issue. What am I going to do with him? Similarly, we have the voice of Jesus, and we have the voice of others who also weigh into our judgment. So Pilate sits on his own judgment seat, and don't we all? So like Pilate, what we do with Jesus is ultimately how we are judged. So don't send him away. Don't deliver him. Be delivered by him. Let's make the right judgment. Release him, receive him, and invite him in today. Thanks for listening.